Wow, wasn't that professional? I'm so professional, I forgot to add Mike. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Hello.
We are here with none other than the maestro, Professor Chip Zdarsky. And thank you for doing this. I know that we planned this so far in advance. We planned this like months ago. And then we got our act together this week. And then I forgot to put up any signage or banners or anything. And I'm like, screw it. We'll still do it. We're still here. So to the one person out there watching, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Ooh, are you there? Hopefully you're there. No, can't hear you. Are you muted? Ooh.
Hear me now?
Oh, yeah, there you are. Ooh.
All right, great. Phew.
I thought this was going to be a really sucky podcast.
That was close.
How are you, sir?
Hey, pandemic. It's my answer for everything these days.
That's awesome.
Yeah, as well as can be expected, I guess.
So you and I have never actually met,
No.
Which is unfortunate. Oh, and Mike is frozen, I think, too. So this is going really well. But yeah, so you and I have never actually met before.
I like thinking that Mike isn't frozen. He's just really intensely staring at us, really thinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, there are some people watching because somebody just said, whoa. Yeah. So,
am I frozen or am I live?
We can hear you.
But your
beautiful face is frozen.
Well, it's on a good. Luckily, it's not stuck on one of these. But
yeah, you look amazing. If it's any consolation.
Oh, now you're live.
Oh, yeah.
So, what's going on with you, Chip? What have you been doing?
All right.
Besides pandemic stuff.
Today on this machine here, I'm coloring the final issue of Sex Criminals.
Yeah, that's right. So, you are an insane man, from what I understand, because you are working on Sex Criminals with Fraction, and you're doing what number are you on that, or what are you guys up to?
It's our 31st issue. It's issue 69. And it's our final one. So yeah, it's a flash forward kind of epilogue issue. And it's been 7 years, someone pointed out recently to me, since we started doing this.
Wow.
And it's super surreal to wrap it up, because every character I draw for the final time, it's like that's the last time I'll draw that character. And this is the book that kind of started me on a proper career in comics. So it's super bittersweet.
Yeah. So you've also been slumming it with the Mike Pellerito guy with things like Jughead and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it's true. That was an insanely fun gig. I don't know who's crackling there. Is that?
I don't know. I think
Mike?
it's you. We can't even hear him.
I can only imagine it's frozen Mike.
So all right,
there we go. Perfect.
Okay, see now it's much better.
About him. That was super fun working with Mike. It started because I was doing variant covers for them. I did a variant cover for Archie issue 1, and I was talking to the editor there, Alex Segura, about doing more variant covers for them. And he had the idea. He's like, "Oh, maybe something else would be suitable for you." And then Mike called me and basically asked if I wanted to write Jughead for the reboot. And I was like, "My God, that's like a dream character for me." We had all these conversations about the character, and it was kind of a fresh reboot. And one of those dream jobs. And Erica Henderson on art was just unbelievable. Yeah. Oh, Mike's back. I was just trash talking you.
Hey.
Oh,
you are so frozen. Worst co-host.
You're awful. So, all right, before everybody starts yelling at me, and we're just gonna dump him out because he's just not working. Let's see, is it working? No, it's just not. So, let's go down the list before everybody starts yelling at me and everybody's pouring in with the comments. You're currently right now, or recently, because I did some homework on you. You're finishing up Sex Criminals with Fraction.
Yep.
You did a DC detective story with Fraction as well.
Yeah, I guess it's just this past week, Detective 1027. They have that big anthology issue.
Yeah.
And I drew a story that Fraction wrote. This is my one and only time to draw Batman and all the characters, so I was just like, I went all in on it.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a ton of fun.
So then you're also doing your creator owned. It's just crackling every time he shows up.
Yeah.
You're also doing is it creator owned Stillwater for Skybound?
Yeah, I mean technically it's not creator owned.
Uh-huh.
Because Skybound owns the copyright on it. It's one of those funny things. Like there's so many different levels of what the industry calls creator owned. Like the most pure example is Image Comics. Like Image Comics is very much like you produce the book, you reap the rewards, you have the copyright on it. Then there's kind of hybrid models like Boom, where they control like media rights, things like that. But then Skybound's another step where they have the copyright on it, and so I'm a profit participant in it. So
yay, profits, yay.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what that actually means? Like
right.
by the time the accounting is done, but when I came up with the idea, it just felt like such a Skybound thing. That
how does it feel like a Skybound thing? It's like, oh wait,
horror. It's horror.
Okay.
Kind of like rural horror, and having been a fan of Walking Dead, I was like, oh, you know what? That might suit Skybound. And I went to them with it about 3 years ago, and at that time I didn't really have the bandwidth to do a proper image book because you really have to project manage those kind of things. So Skybound's been great. The editor there, John Moisen, has assembled an amazing team working on it. So that just came out this week as well. So Detective 1027 and Stillwater.
So you've also got Daredevil still going for Marvel?
Yep, still doing Daredevil.
And you put Matt on trial, and now he's just going to jail. What's happening? What are you doing?
What are you doing? What are you doing? Who do you think you are? Matt is on trial for murder, and because the first issue of our run a year and a half ago, he accidentally kills a guy, and so the whole run's kind of been about that and about the effects of violence, and now he's got to atone for it in a court of law. So it's one of those things that Marvel leaked the cover to issue 25, which is an image of him behind bars, and he's been in jail before as Matt Murdock, but this is going to be a very different thing with different kind of consequences. So yeah, I'm super excited. Like the next year, we've got it all planned out, and it's just going to kind of ramp up and get bigger and bigger. And people seem to enjoy it, and I'm going to try to not disappoint them as we go forward.
And also, I understand you did something really interesting. You did a Spider-Man. Am I getting it right? Life story? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. So that was
I'm getting all these out of the way because people are like, "What else are you working on?" So let's do them all now.
So Life Story is an idea I've had kicking around for a while now, because as you know, reading Marvel Comics, like they have the sliding timeline where the characters always kind of stay a certain age, and things like, the Korean War becomes the Afghanistan conflict as time kind of shifts along, which makes sense in the comics. But when Marvel Comics started off, it was in real time. Like Peter Parker aged.
Right.
Like he started off as 15 and then, went off to college and became like John Romita hunky.
That's right.
And then,
that was a phase, right?
Yeah. I wish I had that phase. I've always just been kind of Steve Ditko awkward, but or like Gil Kane kind of crazy eyes.
If we're gonna describe ourselves that way, I'd probably be a Fred Hembeck, but I'm missing the circles on the elbows. I think.
Yeah, that's perfect. Mike. He's muted, but you're muted.
Put your microphone back on. There you go.
For some reason, he's still muted.
That's great.
Do you have him muted?
No, I don't.
But you're clear, like we can see you perfectly.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's better if there's no sound, because then he'll crackle.
Yeah, he can just nod and hold up signs like
Yeah.
for help.
Nice.
Oh, hey, there
There
we
you
go. Ooh,
Stillwater.
bringing out all the books.
Yeah, we talked about all of them.
Hot damn.
Look at them.
God, you're so behind. We already covered those.
Where's the Comixology original? Where's that one? Aren't you doing a Comixology original as well?
Yeah, we did one this past year called Afterlift. It was a 5-issue series where it's basically about kind of a Uber Lyft driver who picks up a demon and the destination is hell. He's got to take a soul to hell. So it's kind of a car chase theology kind of thing.
Like a fun romantic buddy comedy.
A little bit.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun because, doing the Marvel books, you're continually writing an act 2, which is what Fraction once told me those are like. But with something like Afterlift, we were able to tell a complete story in 5 issues, no sequels, just kind of hit the ground running, tell the full story. And that was super satisfying. And yeah, we got the Eisner for Best Digital Series, so that was awesome. And and Dark Horse is going to be publishing the print version.
Oh wow!
So that's fun to kind of get to have our cake and eat it too.
Yeah, congratulations.
I was going to say with Life Story, the sliding timeline always fascinated me, and so I wanted to tell a story where what if the Marvel Universe kind of aged in real time, like it just kind of kept going.
Mm-hmm.
And I pitched it to an editor there, Tom Brevoort, who's like the oldest standing editor there.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, like, because I pitched him a whole Marvel Universe thing, like 12 issues. And he was like, yeah, people have pitched this to me before. But there's no real way in unless you just focus on one character. And I had just finished writing Spectacular Spider-Man. And so he had the idea, since I knew the character so well, that we could just focus on Spider-Man. So we had 6 issues, one per decade, to basically tell Spider-Man's whole history as if he had aged in real time. So it was a ton of research. I had to reread all of Amazing Spider-Man to make sure I hit kind of the major points I wanted to hit. But yeah, it turned out better than I expected.
So let me ask you this: with all the time that you spend writing and drawing all these projects, you had to reread all of Amazing Spider-Man. Did you forego sleep in order to do that, or how was that accomplished?
It was I mean, like, I can't complain if my work is to read comics,
right?
But yeah, I had to set aside like a few days, just be like, all right, I'm going to a coffee shop with my iPad, Marvel Unlimited, and just like start working on it and just make notes as I went. So yeah, it took like 3 or 4 full days to kind of go through them all, and then planning it was kind of the biggest thing I've had to do in comics, because you had to come up with a timeline showing where each character first originated, and then chart their ages to make sure everything lines up, and then a timeline of all the events that happen in the Spider-Man comics at what date, and then another timeline as to what happens in the real world, because part of the project was to kind of reflect what happens in the real world a bit more. Like we go into the Vietnam War a bit more, we go into the Cold War a bit more in the 80s issue. So yeah, it was super challenging kind of juggling all that. But at Marvel, Tom Brevoort's like, he's such an amazing editor. Like being able to bounce ideas back and forth with him was invaluable, and he was so good at kind of keeping us on track and making sure the story wasn't being sacrificed just to hit the details. Yeah. It was a satisfying project, and what I like about books like that is it's 6 issues, it's one collection. Anyone can pick it up and just read it fresh. If you have knowledge of Spider-Man stories, like, you get something extra out of it. Somebody was saying to me the other day, it's the kind of book where if somebody's interested in something that gets touched upon in that book, then the shop owner can recommend the original for that. Like, I touch upon Kraven's Last Hunt in kind of a different twisted way. And so if somebody likes that, they can pick up Kraven's Last Hunt. I'm just making Marvel so much money.
Yeah, right. Yay, more paychecks! Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marvel's the only company I haven't worked for out there.
Yep.
In terms of books, came close a couple of times, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. What you got to do? But
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Usually it's kind of one camp or the other.
yeah,
Um, Most of the times it's like when one company's done with you, then another one comes along and
right.
you kind of beg for scraps there, and it's like, oh yeah, freelance life. It's fantastic.
Yeah, right.
But no publisher has treated me better than Archie Comics. If only Mike, if only we could hear him.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, he's all right. I've done stuff for Archie, and he's all right.
he's okay.
Look at his facial expressions. He's
I know.
he's foaming at the mouth. He wants to say something.
But you just can't. Sorry.
So Tom asks, what original art do you have on the wall, Chip?
Oh, I have a bunch. So on this wall, I actually have an Archie page up in the top left corner. I don't know exactly the artist. It seems like a Goldberg. Mike would probably know if I brought it close up. Below that, Howard the Duck. It's a page from issue 1 of the series that I worked on because it was my first Marvel gig on a series. And so,
what was your first work for Marvel? It was Howard the Duck, or in another book.
I did covers for them, and I did like a kind of a one-off gag strip. But Howard the Duck was the first series as a writer. Joe Canonis drew it, so he gave me one of the pages from that, which is nice. Next to that is a history of rap poster that my friend Kagan McLeod drew, which has like hundreds of various hip hop artists on it. He wrote little bios on the back. Top one is a Jughead page from Erica Henderson that she gave me, which was fantastic. And below that, Sean Phillips' incognito page I picked up from him at TCAF a few years ago. To the right of that is a Walt Simonsen Jughead cover. Mike, you'll remember that. I think it was issue 7. He did a variant for us. Mm-hmm. And I contacted him because I'm a huge Walt Simonsen fan. And I was like, I'll pay anything.
He's super sweetheart. He did this show with us with Louise a while back, so it was fun.
Oh yeah. No, they're every story you hear about them is true. They're just fantastic, and he sent it to me just for free, and I'm like, I've never even met the guy, and so generous. And above that is a pastel drawing of me as a 5-year-old astronaut. That my great uncle was an illustrator, and he drew that for me when I was going off to kindergarten. And it says like from one artist to another. Good luck with your schooling, because I like to draw back then. And I just got that one framed. But,
that's cool.
Yeah, I've got tons of art over here, but my computer will not get all the way over.
That's cool.
But yeah, there's a Veronica. Mike, you'd recognize that. It's a Veronica Fish, Twin Peaks painting. I know you work with Veronica a lot.
Oh. Yeah, he's still not saying anything.
He's not saying anything. Yeah, that one right there is like
Yeah. So I have a lot of artwork on the wall from different projects that I've worked on because I've loved the artist, and people always ask me, how come you don't have your art on the wall? And I'm like, who wants my artwork on the wall? Like, I'd rather have people I like on the wall.
Yeah, it's always a weird thing. Like in the corner, I have a Sex Criminals print, but it doesn't feel like mine because it was screen printed by this shop in Austin with like cool silver ink and stuff. So at that point, it feels like their art, even though it's technically my art. That's the only thing I have up that is mine. I have a comic rack in the corner. You can't see that every time I produce an issue of something, I put it in the comic rack. And it's weird to see it kind of get full up.
Nice. Let's see. I think this is Mark Hammond, Brother Bear. Do you have a favorite sandwich? Ooh, sandwich. Do you pronounce it sandwich or sandwich?
In Canada, sandwich.
Oh, yeah,
sandwich. There you go. Great question. It used to be a turkey sandwich. Oh, I love a turkey sandwich. Anything on it, like stuffing or like, or just like mustard mayo or lettuce, like and tomato on a turkey sandwich. But I've unfortunately, been vegan for the last like 7 months.
Oh man!
I know I started doing it pre-pandemic, and it worked out quite well because during the pandemic I couldn't go out to restaurants because that's when it really hurts. You go into a
Right.
restaurant and you realize you can't have anything on the menu except for like
Right.
one thing, which is like a salad. But at home, like I can make whatever I want, so I don't notice it as much here. So yeah, now I mean my sandwich of choice is a tofurkey deli slice with some mozzarella, they call it, fake mozzarella,
Uh,
with all the veggie trimmings. It's a very sad lifestyle. I don't recommend it.
I don't think you're.
I'm like the only vegan who does not recommend it.
I was going to say I don't think you're allowed to eat things called mozzarella or tofurkey or something like that.
Oh God, I love it. My wife is a vegetarian, and she's been a vegetarian her whole life. Like her family is vegetarian, so I kind of quickly realized I wouldn't have a lot of meat products in the house.
Mhm.
And then like Thanksgivings and Christmas, we get a tofurkey, like a tofurkey roast,
Mhm.
and I love those. Like
Yeah.
as a meat eater, I would like gravitate towards those. I love them. So yeah, all the fake meats and stuff. I'm like, sign me up.
Really?
Great. Yeah.
Mike Pellerita just texted me because he dropped out of the thing altogether.
Yeah.
So he goes, I'm going to give you guys some room. You guys are great. Give Chip a high five for me. I am not going to do that because he decided not to stick around. So
Yeah.
and we're socially distanced, so that's about as close as we're going to get to a high five.
Yep. Oh, hey, someone put up a link to this, and now I can tweet it.
Oh, there you go. Oh yeah, sorry, I was supposed to do that, but that's probably yeah. I'm sorry. I was just running late and I couldn't get the stream up, and I had to reboot everything. Is the history of rap poster for sale? I'm going to say for him.
It was Kagan McLeod. Go to kaganmcleod.com. Kagan's like an old friend of mine who we did a comic and image called Kaptara together, and he's such an amazing artist and painter. His website has tons of stuff. He might have it for sale. I don't know, but it's amazing. I mean, he did it back in 2005, I think. So the history of rap stops at 2005.
That's it. It doesn't go any further than that.
Yeah, that's it. As far as he's concerned, that's it. That's all of rap.
Tom asked, "Are you in Toronto?" I don't think that's any of Tom's business. But
I am.
Yeah.
I'll admit it. I'm not ashamed.
Are you fully Canadian since birth, or youngers? Yeah.
Yeah. We're packing up right now because we're going to be going out west to Victoria, British Columbia for the winter. Because I started to picture a classic Canadian Toronto winter in a pandemic.
Okay. Yeah.
Where you can't really go out and you can't have people in your house. And
so basically, you're like, right now it's a pandemic. I'm isolated. I'm going to go somewhere else that is even more isolated.
Well, no, like if I stayed here, it'd be more isolated because like right now we can like see friends outside, but like once, oh my God, Mark Wade.
How did he get this number?
He's like obsessed with me. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, right. But you know, he does draw the best Flash. He
draws the best Flash.
He draws the best Flash.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a story I'll have to fill you in on eventually, but he does draw the best Flash.
I rag on Mark a lot because it's incredibly easy to do. Both, I don't want to get into it, but
oh, please.
But his Flash run is one of my favorite runs of all time in comics. Like I was so deep into it. It's one of the only times where I really, really anticipated next month's issue. The Return of Barry Allen arc was top notch stuff. Yeah,
I have two Mark Waid stories. One is we were set up at a convention next to him, and my buddy Art Baltazar, that we did Tiny Titans, a bunch of stuff together. He said, Mark Waid, he's kind of a big deal, but I'm going to get him to remember me. So all weekend he kept telling him, "You draw the best Flash, sir. You draw the best." And Mark is like, "I don't draw Flash. I write Flash." He goes, "No, you draw it. You draw the best Flash." So he has since remembered us. And another time I was out to dinner and we were all talking about our favorite comics, and one of my absolute favorite comics is a story from Justice League, the Tower of Babel. And I'm describing how I love this, and this happens, and I'm at dinner with the guy, and halfway through the conversation, I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm describing your own comic to you." And he's just sitting there with a smile on his face. I'm like, "You could have stopped me at any time, you know?" But yeah.
The first time I'm not going to say met Mark Waid because we didn't technically meet. Like I was a big fan, and I was just kind of getting into making my own comics around 2003. I was at like Wizard World Chicago, whatever. It was one of my first shows where I was like a professional. Basically, I paid for a table,
Right.
and it was like an after party, and it was like kind of this bar area, and I was in line with my buddy, and we were behind Mark. And I recognized him, like, oh my God, it's Mark Waid, and I'd already had a few drinks. But Mark was surrounded by like beautiful women. Like I don't know what.
I don't think that's the thing that happens.
It doesn't make sense to me. I guess he's got some sort of charisma, but like he's chatting with them and stuff, and like as I stand in line waiting for drinks, and I don't know why I did it, but I just kind of reached forward and I just kind of started gently massaging him. I'd never met him, and I was so drunk. And I don't even think he noticed. I think he just assumed one of the ladies was massaging him, and I don't think he even turned around. I just gave him like a little bit of a massage, and then just kind of went back to my business.
You know what? Now that you tell that story, I think that's the only reason he came on here and commented, because he saw you and he's like, ooh, you know, just like Sarah says, hello.
Hello, Sarah. Sarah's been a huge supporter of Stillwater. She's been like kind of hand selling it on Twitter, which is amazing. She's like our number one fan. I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Joseph asked, what characters on your wish list to write?
It's kind of funny. Like I don't have I've never really had a wish.
Before you get into that, Mark noticed. He noticed.
All right, he just rolled with it because he's a professional. I've never really had a wish list of characters. The one that kind of stood out as I was starting to do Marvel work was Spider-Man. And so in issue 1 of Howard the Duck, I just put a Spider-Man scene in there just so I could say to myself that I wrote Spider-Man dialogue and check it off the list. But I don't, I know some creators kind of have like notebooks of ideas for characters that they want to do and stuff like that, but I don't tend to do that. I like to, if an opportunity is presented, that's the point where I stop and think, oh, is this a thing I want to do? And if so, what do I have to say about the character? Do I have something good enough to bring to the table? And there have been a few opportunities that have come up. Like actually Flash is an interesting one because, talking about Mark's run, like, and me being a huge fan, several years ago, DC contacted me when they were relaunching Flash. They wanted me to do kind of backup stories in it. I was like, oh, wow, that's like one of my favorite characters. Like I'd love to. And let me just, I'll read some current issues and think about it. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I don't have anything. Like I had some stuff and it was kind of like dumb, kind of fun things here and there. But there wasn't anything that was catching for me. And I knew if I sat down and really put in the time, I'm sure I could come up with something. But I just took it as a sign that this isn't the time to write that character. And so right. I politely declined and kind of went on with my business. And then that's happened a few times with like gigs at Marvel where they'll approach me with something. And at first I'll be like, oh, I'm flattered. And I'm like, but yeah, I don't think I'm right for it right now. I had to give a lot of thought, like, because they offered me Spectacular Spider-Man a few years ago. And I had to take a couple of days to think about it, which is weird because, it's like my childhood favorite character. But yeah,
I was going to say, is it an intimidation thing or you just can't get in the mindset at that point? Or
no, I'm this is a weird thing to say, but I'm not really intimidated by stuff like this, like because I recognize it's fictional characters and it's a business, right. And it's as a kid I would be intimidated. As an adult, I'm like, no, like okay, I'm a professional. Right. Can I do this? Yeah. It's more like, can I do a good enough job? Like right. I just don't want to do. I don't know if we can swear on this or not.
Yeah, absolutely, go for it.
I don't want to do a shitty job.
Yeah.
I don't want to do a thing just for the. I don't want to do a thing just for the paycheck, or worse, as a stepping stone. Like I think a lot of creators are like, well, I'm going to take that because if I take this character, then that means they'll offer me this character next. I'm like, God, like I don't know. I just don't want to. I don't want to do that. Like I've been afforded an opportunity because Sex Criminals did well out of the gate. Oh, hey, nice. Uh, Financially, I didn't necessarily need to write comics because my full-time job was drawing Sex Criminals. So everything I wrote was kind of like purely out of a love of writing and a love of the character and the story. Now the Sex Criminals is wrapping up. Now I'm desperate. Now I'll write anything. All my ideals are out the window.
Anybody listening? He needs a job.
I need a job.
He's only writing 16 titles right now, and art on some others.
I've got my deadline board off to the side. 4, 5, 6, 7, and there's 9 titles on there.
Yeah,
that I'm writing right now.
Yeah,
and,
basically you're slacking. Slacking. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we were offered the chance to do Superman type thing, and I was talking to Art about it, and I'm like, I don't know, I feel almost intimidated. Like, Superman could do everything. Like everything's been told about him. And then we started talking, and he goes, well, you just rattled off 5 or 6 stories as we were talking. And I'm like, oh, I guess we can write it then.
Yeah, Superman's an interesting one because he is. I think he's a hard character to crack for a lot of writers.
Right.
I know Mark's got all the Superman ideas, and he's champing at the bit to write them. Maybe he is. I don't know. That's the rumor.
Oh yeah.
Mark, chime in. Let us know.
I'll send you a link. You could jump on, tell us. Yeah. Give us an exclusive.
But it was kind of funny, like writing Daredevil. Like I'm kind of writing a classic Daredevil story of him kind of being beaten down and kind of coming back up, which has been done time and time again. But sometimes you just have to find a new way into an old idea. Someone could say all the Superman stories have been done, but it's like, yeah, but what's the spin on the idea? Mm-hmm. I think that's usually the best way to kind of approach a character with that kind of that history to it,
With the amount of projects that you work on, because I work on quite a few different things at once, and people are like, do you ever get writer's block? And my answer is always no, because if I'm stuck with one thing temporarily, I just move to something else. Is that the same for you with all these projects, or?
You'd think I would, but I mean, it's usually I have enough on the go that the fire that burns brightest I'm focused on, and deadlines aren't. Before I was doing comics, I worked for a newspaper, a daily newspaper, a national one here in Canada.
Oh, you know what a deadline is then?
So yeah, that's the thing. Like, I was kind of like their humor guy. I would write political columns or stuff for the arts section, and I do drawings as well. Like I was kind of like a jack of all trades there. But usually, what would happen is like by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that's when the stories would start to materialize, like the news stories, and then I would have to like figure out what to do with it, and I would have to write and draw a thing. Either a graphic or a column or a cartoon. I would have to have it done by like 6:30 to meet the first deadline for the national sections, and it just has to get done. Like it can't run a blank page.
Has any of that experience with journalism helped you with comics and deadlines? Or
oh my God, immeasurably. Like. Deadlines in comics just seem like a breeze compared to newspaper.
No.
Like because of that daily grind, you just get used to producing under crazy circumstances. And also my job was such a hodgepodge of things that I learned a ton of different like computer programs and art styles to accommodate each story. So when I transitioned and started doing Sex Criminals, like so much of what I do in that is informed by what I did at the newspaper. Like I kind of stripped down the style. Like I used to be a more detailed guy, and I got simpler because the newspaper demanded it. A lot of like Adobe Illustrator kind of graphics are used in Sex Criminals in the art. Even the layout on InDesign, like that's what we were using at the newspaper when I left. So I could use that and Photoshop as well. Yeah. Yeah, it also taught me to be succinct,
Yeah.
because I remember the first thing I wrote for the newspaper. Like I kept kind of pitching things, and eventually they gave me a page in the paper for like, it was like a Thanksgiving joke thing, and I was making all these jokes and graphics and like a pie chart that's a pumpkin pie, just stupid stuff. But I remember I handed it in to this one editor, and they came back to me and they're like, "What are you doing?" Like, I was like, you can't tell a joke with 3,000 words. Like, it's a newspaper. People are reading this on their way to work. Like, get to your punchline, man. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And like, at first, you get upset because you're like, oh, they don't understand. Like, every word I produce is
Right.
precious and it's a
Right.
beautiful jewel.
I'm a writer, damn it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm choosing them so carefully, and the alliteration and the way it flows. And then you're like, fuck, it doesn't matter if no one's going to read it.
Right.
And so it really taught me to like say a lot with less. And that's translated to comics as well, because obviously you can't be crazy verbose.
Speaking of comics, Mark at Comics writes, the issue of Peter Parker where you wrote where Spider-Man and Jonah were having dinner together is my top 10 favorite Spider-Man issues of all time.
That's very sweet. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to write. One of the weird things, because the book I was doing for Marvel at the time was Spectacular Spider-Man, and because it's a secondary title, you can't really do too much in it. Like, you kind of tell your fun stories off to the side, but you can't, affect continuity. Because Dan Slott was doing Amazing Spider-Man, and I wanted to stay out of his way.
And everybody knows that guy can't write Spider-Man. Everybody knows that.
Give him some time. He'll figure it out.
How many issues did they give him, for crying out loud? If he hasn't figured it out now.
I know.
Yeah.
That was
his run on Spider-Man was one of my favorites in a long time. I had dropped off Spider-Man for a long time, but he brought me back, so he was awesome.
Yeah, when I was going to say, one of the sad parts about getting the gig on Spectacular was I flew to New York, and I had lunch with the Spider-Man editors and Dan, and then Dan told me everything that's happening in the next year and a half of Spider-Man comics. Mm-hmm. So I would know, and I'm just like, well, fuck, like,
why did you do that?
I just I guess you just hit a certain point. It's like, oh yeah, now I can't be surprised by stories anymore at Marvel because I'm in the machine, and that's that. Right. But the Dinner with Jonah issue, I'd always planned, like, that came around issue 6. I'd planned to have an issue where it's just Spider-Man having dinner with J. Jonah Jameson. I gave Jonah like his own little podcast and his like, his blog, Threats and Menaces. And so it was like him interviewing Spider-Man.
Where did you get those ideas, newspaper guy?
Well, there you go, right? That's actually helped too. I wrote a whole issue about like kind of Jonah as one of the original fake news guys.
Oh wow,
which is true, right?
Yeah. Spider-Man, he's a menace.
I know that Mike Allred drew that, and that was a dream too. But the Dinner with Jonah issue, I had it planned out, but I kind of realized like by the end, Jonah should find out who Spider-Man is. And that was like a big discussion with my editors because, again, secondary book, you don't want to kind of mess with Dan's plans on Amazing. But yeah, like Nick Lowe was the editor, and to his credit, he challenged me on it just to make sure I knew what I was doing. But once we kind of realized the kind of stories that we could get and the mileage we could get of Jonah wanting to be his mentor, he said, go for it. So that made that issue special to me, and it seems to be special to readers too, which is nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, not that I expect you to have an answer for this because you obviously have no time, but what do you read in comics, or do you read comics other than your own?
I mean, the big problem is, I often say I've got like 3 stacks next to my bed, and it's the comics I read for work, the comics I read that are created by friends of mine that you feel like you got to read, and then there's the pile that I want to read.
Right.
There's a lot of crossover between those 3 piles, obviously, but I got to say, like at Marvel right now, like Hickman's X-Men stuff and the team of writers that he's got going there, I love it.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. I've had some discussions with other writers about it.
Yeah, I haven't read any of those because, like you said, I have piles of them, and it's just like people are like, well, what are you reading? I'm like, I want to read all of them. I buy
Yeah.
them all the time. They're stacked up over there. I just haven't read it.
Did you read House of X and Powers of 10?
I have them. I could go.
That's the one. I would suggest like putting some time aside this weekend and just reading those. You know, pretty much its own thing. You don't need anything going into it. And if that grabs you, then like you're going to be hooked and you're going to want to kind of keep going with it. It's super smart. It's very different from what's been done before in those titles, and the art's spectacular, and all the books that have kind of come out of that have been great. Like I got to kind of touch on it a little bit because I did a Fantastic Four X-Men miniseries that kind of sprang out of that, and it was like a pleasure to just kind of be part of that crew for a little bit and kind of hear their plans and bounce things off of them. It's one of the most successful relaunches I think that's ever happened in comics.
Do you get asked this a lot? How do you go from style to style, or from funny to serious? Like, how do you go from Spider-Man to Jughead type thing? And as a writer and a creator, I know that I like to work on a lot of different stuff. So I kind of know the answer. But for everyone out there, how do you do that?
I mean, it's funny because like I will say first of all, it's not a wise career move because you don't really build an audience that way. Like someone who's reading Daredevil isn't necessarily going to read Jughead, and Jughead's not going to read Daredevil or Howard the Duck or Stillwater, or definitely not Sex Criminals. Like switching tones and genres can provide some whiplash to the reader. So it makes me, I find it hard to believe there's anyone who's a fan of Chip Zdarsky. Like there might be fans of like Daredevil or a fan of like Sex Criminals or Howard, but like the idea that someone likes all of those is weird to me. But it's funny, like
don't sell yourself short.
No, but like I often think of like Stephen King, master of horror. But do you think like in his downtime he's just watching horror shows and horror movies? Like he likes all these things,
right? And
I think everybody enjoys a variety of genres that they consume. So in turn, as a writer, like I want to do all of those things as well. Like Stillwater is like a creepy horror book, and I'm like, I love those kind of stories. I want to try and tell one.
Right.
You know, Jughead. Like I grew up reading Jughead. I'm like, I would love to try and tell that. And maybe some writers are just scared to do that because they are worried about career stuff. But
I love doing that. I love going for horror and comedy stuff. And one of my favorite books by Stephen King was his book on writing. Not so much his horror books, but his book on writing is amazing.
It's a fantastic book. I recommend it to anyone who wants to write anything, really. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. Sarah says, "Who's your favorite character to write for in Stillwater?"
Well, that's tricky because they're not coming up yet.
Oh,
it's one of those. It's because the book I've written it far enough in advance. Like, I can't really talk about that.
Yeah. You'll tell me. You'll tell me after we go off the air, and then I won't tell anybody.
Perfect. There's a character coming up that that's a super joy to write. Just from like kind of a moral perspective, which is, I think you're way in with any great character.
Cool. Joseph asks, aside from House of X, I assume he means House of X. Hose of X is a completely different book. And Powers of X, what do you recommend?
I love the idea of Hose of X. That's the Sex Criminals spinoff.
There you go. I get a royalty check on that one.
Yeah, something current. I mean, yeah. I'm keeping up on most of the Marvel stuff. I think Nick Spencer's doing a great job on Amazing Spider-Man. The book at DC that I absolutely adored, and it's not just because he's a friend. It was Jimmy Olsen by Fraction and Lieber.
Yeah,
so funny.
That Fraction guy, man, he can't write anything.
He's amazing. He overthinks everything, but the end result is so good. Like like Jimmy Olsen's, it's simple, straightforward, but also kind of complex and convoluted, and
Right.
but above all else, it's funny and just like a joyful exploration of the DC universe.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
I love when creators are allowed to just go.
Yeah.
You know, like when there's not a lot of editorial mandate. Well, you have to do this or you have to do that. When they're given the creative freedom to go, just some spectacular stuff happens.
Yeah, I mean, and Fraction's a great example of that because Hawkeye was like
Yeah.
such a huge success,
Love
but
that
like
book.
before that came out, who the hell would pick up a Hawkeye book?
Right.
But like him and David and Annie, like they made one of my favorite books of all time. Like it's such a great run. And you look at like King and Walta on Vision.
Mhm.
Like that's another case where it's just like a Vision book.
I just read that. Yeah, I just read that.
Yeah, you know, Vision, take it or leave him as a character, maybe.
Right.
But that book just like
Right.
so awesome, so creepy, so
read that
smart.
one. I read that one after I read the Mr. Miracle, which I loved.
Yeah, that's another case. Like a fantastic book with a character that like, yeah, I like Mr. Miracle, but I wouldn't like put him like, you know, top tier character. But I mean, Tom Smart and kind of gravitating towards those kind of characters because you're not unencumbered, but you're less encumbered, and you can switch genres a bit more easily with those kind of characters. Like I think Tom's Batman run was great, but if I had to put that up against Vision and Mr. Miracle, like Vision and Mr. Miracle win out for sure.
Yeah. Shows you how far behind I am in my reading that I just read Vision a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
What about artists? Who's out there that you look at their artwork and you're like, wow, I hate this person, but in a good way.
All of them. I mean, Erica Henderson, working with her on Jughead, like it was outstanding kind of seeing how naturally gifted she is as an artist. Like her layouts were just like spot on every time. Like there are artists I work with who do really great detail work, but sometimes the layouts are just like, okay, well, the story is getting sacrificed here. Like you got a cool thing here, but like nobody knows where that character is going or coming from. Artists like Erica and Chris Anka just nail it every time. Like you never have to like give them a note on anything because they're just so talented.
Yeah.
And seeing Erica's progression as an artist too, like kind of beyond Jughead and Squirrel Girl is pretty amazing.
Yeah, lately I've had this really big fascination with Joelle Jones's work.
Yeah.
You know, she did Lady
Gorgeous.
Killer, and I'm like, what is this? What am I looking at? It was just amazing. And then to follow her over to Catwoman, looking at every page. Again, another book I have that I did not read, but as soon as I got it, I went through every page like, ooh, look at this.
Yeah, just gorgeous.
Yeah.
There's so many talented artists now. It's upsetting.
Now, when you're writing, because you're an artist yourself, when you're writing for another artist, are they intimidated, or is it easier for you because it's an artist, or how do you write? Because the way I write for artists, or the way I write for basically anything now is I write because I'm working on so many projects and my day job. I write in thumbnails. I write in like little I lay out the page and then I tell them, look, you can change this as long as the sentiment of the page is there. Change it, add, subtract, do what you got to do. But this is what was in my head at the time.
It's one of those things. Like, I'd be interested to hear the artists I work with, whether or not they agree with me. But I think for the most part, artists enjoy drawing my scripts because I'm coming to it with an artist's eye. There's less problem solving there, I think, for them, because I kind of instinctually know how a page is going to get laid out. I don't thumbnail them, but like I know better than to like stack these panels on this panel. Like
right, yeah.
I'm a pain in the ass when the layouts come in.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that, and I always feel bad about it. But it's like sometimes I can like divorce myself from it, just kind of let it go. But I tend to give a fair amount of notes at the layout stage, just because obviously it's the easiest stage to change things and correct anything that might be off. Yeah, I do feel bad for some. Sometimes Marvel will team me up with like a relatively new artist, and
you're like, oh no.
it definitely becomes a lot more work. I kind of assume kind of a secondary editor role on books like that, or like art director or something, because that's when I'll have notes on every page for the layouts, just to like kind of stop them from making mistakes, and increase the value of storytelling on a page. Sometimes I'll sketch things out to show them what I mean if they're not getting it. Again, I'm a monster. Like, I recognize that. Like, nobody wants to get notes back, especially from the fucking writer. And I genuinely get it. But like, I think in most of those cases they became stronger artists for it, and I become a stronger writer for it as well, because I kind of recognize maybe where I've gone wrong in describing something for them. Yeah. Maybe I should. Maybe one day there'll be an intervention. All my artists will get together and sit me down. I do feel bad.
All right, I'm going to ask you this because I ask this every time I talk to someone. Teach me something I don't know. Oh man. Oh no. Oh
no. Oh, sorry, I didn't know.
This was a quasi-family show.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. That's all I know. That's all I know how to do.
Good. So you've answered that. Thank you very much.
Oh my God. I don't know, man.
We put you on the spot. Don't fret it. It's a non-stress thing. It's okay.
I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know a lot. That's the problem.
No, I don't think that's true.
I just don't know a lot.
No. One of the fun things I got out of somebody was they told me about Jeremy Hahn told me about the backstory of his house, which was interesting. So that's on another that you could go back and watch. So that's fun. Yeah.
You're not even going to tell me what he said. Now I got to go through the archives.
You gotta go through the archives to watch
Jeremy Hahn.
And Wayne says, "Oh, that was an After Dark sessions with Chip and Franco." Yeah. It was that. No, that's not a size reference. That's just we got about that close to it.
It's what you do with it. It's what you do with it.
All right, I'll give you an easier question. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Well, thanks for reminding me I can't have ice cream anymore.
Oh, there you go.
It's funny. My Tofurkey flavored ice cream. My wife, she admitted to me recently that when we started dating, we were touch and go kind of towards the beginning, like trying to understand each other. And at one point I told her I don't care for ice cream. And she was like, that was the moment I almost ended it.
Wow.
Like that almost pushed it over, because I just get the brain freeze too quickly. And I'm just like, it's always a rush when it's dripping.
I love ice cream, and my wife is meh. So it's got to be a thing. It's got to be.
I mean, like, if it's a really good ice cream, I can do it. Like Haagen-Dazs, like some caramel cone explosion. Like, I'm like, all right, that's a good one.
There's some
but otherwise, I might do a milkshake. That's about it.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. Everybody out there should go read Sex Criminals. They should pick up DC Comics Detective 1027, I think it is, right? Stillwater from Skybound, Daredevil from Marvel, Spider-Man Life Story from Marvel, Comicsology original that you did with Jason Liu. Afterlift.
Yeah.
And am I leaving anything out?
No, I think that's everything current. There's a few more things that are going to be announced soon, which is always exciting, nerve-wracking.
There you go. All right, so go pick up all of those things and future things.
Future things
From Chip Zdarsky.
Imagine the future. Oh my god.
I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks. All right, everybody. Take it easy.
Bye.